The average rep says that's just the way things are. But the elite sales professional understands, okay, how can I lean into my strengths, but also be aware of my weaknesses and adjust the personality type of the prospect?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Of today's Medical Sales Leader, where I have guests come on and share the real behind the scenes tips that you need to operate in the modern world of medical sales. And today is no different. I have an incredible guest with me here today. His name is Marcus Chan. And if you haven't followed Marcus Chan yet, I highly encourage you to do so. He gives away all the goods when it comes to becoming a major player in sales, especially earning six figures, really refining your approach and learning how to develop systems that will support you quickly and for the long term. So Marcus, I've had the unique opportunity to interview you now 3 times, and I'm so blessed. So thank you so much for entertaining me one more time.
Oh, Clay, I'm excited to be here. We always have fun. We always run out of time, and I expect probably today will be no different than any other time. I'm pumped to be here.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I feel really grateful to have you with me again today. So, I think a lot of people are wondering, what are we going to talk about today? First of all, if you haven't grabbed Marcus's book, I'm shamelessly going to demand that you do so right now. We were just talking about this behind the scenes because how you can grab a lot of different sales theory books. Marcus gives you a playbook right here, and it can apply to all kinds of different markets and industries. So do yourself a favor and grab it today. And Marcus, thanks for creating such an awesome second bestseller.
I appreciate that. It was pretty cool to put together, right? Because ultimately, I put together for those out there who want a playbook to actually go and print some money and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, you did not disappoint. This thing is absolute gold, down to how you can analyze personality types before you go into a cold call. And I think that is something that maybe we start off with that at the beginning, because at the core, if we're going to apply this kind of sales strategy to any market, I feel like that's something that everybody needs to know. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I think one of the most important things is most salespeople have a certain way of doing things, and it's not that it's necessarily wrong, but if you've ever felt, I'm just better with this type of prospect, well, you're probably right because of your personality type and how that prospect is like. But then when you get in front of somebody else, it's like, it's really hard to sell this type of person. And the average rep says that's just the way things are. But the elite sales professional understands, okay, how can I lean into my strengths, but also be aware of my weaknesses and adjust the personality type of the prospect? And I really break it down into 4 types of personality types. And depending on which personality, studies you looked into, there's many out there. I kind of generally bucket into 4, right? And when I go through them, some you might be like, well, I think I'm more this than that. Sometimes it's a blend. All right. So it's not necessarily, there's nothing that's binary. It's not one or the other. It's usually a blend. All right. So for example, so number one is analytical. So an analytical decision maker, they're like usually pretty much in the weeds. They want to know numbers. They ask a lot of questions. They're very specific. They're very particular. They get in like the nitty gritty of things. That's a really common decision maker that you'll have, especially at the really high up level, generally speaking. Then you have like a director style, like my personality, which they're very direct. Like they're very short, they're very concise with you. They're very like they don't want you to BS them around. They don't like fluff. They want you to get right to the point. And in fact, sometimes when they talk to you, you might feel like they're trying to bulldoze you, and you feel run over by that, right? And it's not because they don't like you. That just might be just how they operate. So they're usually very busy, very hurried. They're always like ready to go, taking action pretty quickly, right? Then there's like expressive. Expressive is like, you can kind of see they have more personality. They're more open. They're friendly. They're these colorful language, and they just have a personality that's very vibrant, and they're very visionary in how they talk. Right. And they don't usually get into the weeds or details. And then you have like the more emotional feeling based one, and which is more interpersonal, which they are, you can tell by the word they use, feel. They might be soft spoken. They care about how other people feel. And it's not necessarily a bad thing as well. They're amiable, right? Which you can kind of guide them as well. And when you understand that there's 4 personality types, whatever you want to call them, then you can adjust your style, right? Because of how you perceive them. So for example, when you walk, especially in the field sales world, if you can see their office, it'll give you you can tell pretty quickly what's important to them, right? So for example, like typically a director style, they love status, recognition, accolades, etc. That's my style. I like to win. I play to win. I'm very direct. I'm right to the point. I hate fluff, right? And that can drive some people the wrong way, right? And especially if I'm on a sales call, if they're more soft-spoken and more amiable, if I just take over and start dominating that conversation, that could totally turn them off. I made the mistake early on, right? Or if they're also a director like mentality, and now you might go head to head. So there's a balance of how you adjust it. So, but the key is when you understand that, and for every prospect, so not just the decision maker, but the gatekeeper, the office manager, anybody you talk to, and you realize they each have their own personality type, it's like, how can you adjust it? What language do they speak? And how can you identify that language and speak their language?
That's so critical. And, I really like that you bring that up in your book, because without a doubt in any industry it applies. But, in medical sales, I think there's this feeling of, because it's so difficult to access doctors since 2020, but really it went earlier than that. The last 10 years, gatekeepers have been becoming tighter and tighter and tighter with who gets let back in the office and who gets access to the OR. And we have this idea that a doctor is just this hard driver. He's really elusive and it's hard to get a hold of, and he probably just doesn't want to talk to me. But really, if we leaned into these different personality types, like you're saying, then it would make each step of the process easier. And I think we would understand our client better.
100%.
One of the things that I know that medical sales reps and managers both have a ton of trouble with right now is access. Almost every single client that I work with is having a heck of a time. In the first 5 minutes, they'll say something to the effect of, well, access has been really hard, but in the last 2 years, it's been absolutely closed. So now what? So I'd love to hear if you could give advice to a rep or a manager even who was trying to guide their team on new ways to get access to these hard to reach decision makers. Where should they start? What's something new they should be trying?
Great question. So first off, how we view it's really important. So a lot of people don't realize this, but this is actually good. And here's what I mean by that. When it's really hard to get a hold of decision makers, especially for medical in the medical field, that means hard for everyone else as well. So that becomes now a competitive advantage. When the barrier of entry is high, that gives you an opportunity to become better. And the mistake a lot of reps make is they're like, oh, it's too hard. Like they just complain about it, right? Which, that's okay. It's okay if it's hard. It now becomes a barrier of entry. And what's really cool is because it's hard, once you're able to actually break free, earn the trust, and earn the business, they're going to stay with you so much longer because no one else can break in.
Yeah.
it becomes a moat for your business as well. So when you understand that and you perceive it that way, you're more willing to do the work it takes to actually break free. And I'm gonna share with you I'm just going to share with you a few different ways you kind of break through, but I want to share with you just context, because I talk to a lot of medical device sales professionals or even pharma, and they're kind of like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. Right. It is hard for sure. Right. But there are also more tough situations. Right. And I'll give you a specific example. Even as a rep going in the field, there were businesses I would call on where you would try to pull up and there's a security guard at the very front. So you got to go through security, or sometimes there's no security guard. It's just completely locked. Right. You have to scan a barcode and you can see the building. You can see the building. You can see there's plenty of vehicles and you can see there's a big thrive business. You know, it's a huge opportunity, but you can't even get through the door. You call the main line. It's just a main line. There's no phone directory or anything. Right. Yeah. But the reality is like, those are, again, moats. Those are moats to the business. Right. So now it's like, how do you actually break free and break through? And there's many different ways you can do it, right? So like, for example, like, you know, like if you're actually, number one, have you done your homework on the prospect? Have you identified the best possible way to actually get their information, right? Whether it's a main line, or if you can find a cell number, which I know some people don't call cell numbers, but you have to lean towards discomfort, right? You don't get paid. You do not get paid to be comfortable, right? Like you do not get paid to be comfortable, right? Can you get their email address? It's shocking how, like, it's like, if you just did a little bit of homework, or if you have access to today, you get to buy a lot of email addresses, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Or you can reverse hack it, meaning, let's just say, for example, you cold outbound a doctor's office, and the office manager answers like, I can't give out any information. Like, I want you to just send an email to give us a general office email, right? Well, here's the thing. Let's just say it's like, help at, you know, drjones.com, something like that, right?
Right.
Well, now you know, like, interesting. Okay. Like, help. Dr. Jones is probably giving me the domain. Well, how about the front part? Can I run a few different tests? For example, can I go and can I type in potential variations of the front part of the email? You know, let's just say it's Tony Jones, Tony.Jones at drjones.com, Tony Jones at drjones.com. You know, T.Jones, and you take that and you can throw it into, say, Gmail and see which one gets verified, right? So there's many ways. My point is like, there's not going to be one silver bullet, and that's a mistake I think a lot of reps make. Like, what's that one silver bullet to get through? There's not. There's not. It's a matter of being able to try multiple different ways. It's like if you talk to gatekeeper, how could you be more persuasive, more influential with our gatekeeper? If you pop it in, how can you gain their trust faster? How can you break through the noise? How can you treat them with respect so they're actually going to help you out? You know, who do you know, referrals that can help you get into the opportunity? So I think a lot of times as salespeople, we think so linearly. We're like, all right, I try to go in, door was locked. They don't have anybody in. I try to call, they didn't answer. I was a voicemail. I sent one email to general email. There's no way in. Well, if it was that easy, that one touch point, one linear process can get you in, then it's going to work every time. The point is, you want to identify, number one, is it a viable opportunity? Number two, then you want to do the work to actually try to break through, right? And you're going to have to mix it up depending on the situation. If it's a big healthcare system, it can be very different, right? If it's a big healthcare system, you might be calling on the C-suite instead, right? To make big implementation going down depending on what you sell, et cetera. Right. So there's other ways to kind of leverage it. But the key is like, when you look at each opportunity, you want to think it's kind of like ants. If you ever have ants in your house, you know, you think your house is fine, and suddenly you have all these ants, like, where does it come from? And you find they found a weak point in your pantry, and they're coming underneath because they smell the sugar or something, right? Like, oh, interesting. That's a weak point. As a sales rep, it's the same thing, especially if it's a hard opportunity. What's the weak point? How can you break through? Is it through the gatekeeper? Is it through walking in? Is it through a call? Is it email? Is it through multiple sources? Is it through finding them on Facebook and messaging them on Facebook? Is it through Instagram? Is it through Twitter? So it's not necessarily linear, but if the juice is worth the squeeze, if it's a good opportunity, it's being able to think creatively on how can you best cut through the noise. And whichever medium you go through, how can you make sure the message actually resonates, is actually to their benefit?
Oh,
So you
yeah.
start thinking this way, it now becomes much more powerful to actually connect with the doctor, to actually have a conversation, to actually move forward.
So, when you are in the sales seat, I feel like a little bit of what you're talking about is also we feel so much pressure to close on that call.
Mhm.
But really, maybe and I'm cheating because I've read your book and I
Yeah.
love your process.
Yeah.
But can you walk people through how not every call needs to be, hi, can you give me your business? But maybe you go in for a fact-finding call as a first step. So can you share a little bit about what the different types of entry points or different calls can have, like the different purposes to eventually get you to closing a sale?
Absolutely. So I picture a sales process is so much like it's like sports, right? Like
Mm,
the goal, your goal is to make a goal, right? To make a basket, whatever, right? To get to the end zone. There's a desired result you want to get to. Now, is it every single time you can be able to throw a touchdown? No, no way, right? Like sometimes yes, but it's like the more complex the opportunity is, the less likely it's gonna be a one call close, if you will. The goal is how can every time I have the ball, I move it down the field, right? So each step should hopefully sell the next step depending on what's going on, right? So for example,
mhm.
if let's say you walk into a doctor's office and you know who the doctor is, you've never talked to them, they've never called you back, they never sent any emails, they open your email, but you haven't been able to break through. So maybe perhaps your first stage is going to be, okay, if I pop into the office, my goal is I need to gain trust with that gatekeeper, right?
Mhm.
So they can hopefully open the calendar up and put me on the calendar. Or,
Yeah.
let me know when there's blank spots, if there's even any blank spots on the calendar, right? Like, or find a better way to actually catch them, right? And when you start
Yeah.
thinking this way, it's like, it gets a little bit different. So, for example, like you might walk in, and now it's like, all right, you know the receptionist is John, the receptionist, and now
Mhm.
it's like you maybe already called me before. You walk in, instead of saying, "I want to talk to Dr. Jones," it's like, "Hey, are you John?" Yeah, I'm John. They're confused now. Oh, hey, John,
Mm.
I'm Marcus with X. Actually, I talked to you on the phone for a little bit, right? Like I know it's been a crazy busy day, but is there any chance I could talk to so and so? No, he's busy right now. No worry. Don't just like leave now. Build a little trust
Yeah.
rapport with them, right?
Yeah.
Find out what's going on in their world. Build some build some trust here, right? Like the key is like when we start thinking transformationally about opportunities, and you realize by building some trust with John might now guide you to when they're available. That's really powerful, right? Because if
Mhm.
you think about this, like I'll give you an example. So there'll be times I walk in to a walk-in cold call, right? You're walking to the business or whatever, or even medical office. We walk in medical offices as well. And you talk about reception. They're kind of guarded, and then
Yes.
you talk to them for a little bit. They start opening up. I ask them some easy questions, and they feel really comfortable. Hey, like, hey, do you happen to know like what you guys do for X, Y, and Z? Oh no, we got it taken care of. Cool. How long you used it for? Oh, we used it for like 20 years. We're really happy. We love the rep. That's great to hear. Awesome. How long have you been here for? I've been here for 5 years. Well, that's amazing. I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of salespeople coming. Oh yeah, all the time. Okay, cool. And now they're kind of laughing. There'll be a little bit of trust, a little bit of
Mhm.
conversation. And now it's so easy to kind of ask another question that's relevant to you, right? Hey, so I know obviously the doctor is really loyal to who they're using. Like, do you happen to know, like, I mean, based on what you've seen so far, like, would they be open to the conversation at all? I mean, I think so, but only if we can talk about this. Oh, okay, cool. That's all you need. You just need an opening, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of my point. It's like, I think we think so linearly. It's like, if I don't hit this objective, then it's a dead opportunity. No, you actually build some trust and gain a rapport. You moved it forward, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
the key is being able to get trust as fast as possible. And I would say the faster you can do that, the better it's going to be, right? That's why it's like when you walk in, you have to be ready to go. Like you have to be ready to gain trust as fast as possible. You can't like be moving slow and like I was trying to get hold of Doctor.
Right.
Like, it's like Jones. Like, who are you, right? So like this is where it's like once the game timer starts, you gotta be on.
Yes.
And we started thinking this way. Each stage we moves forward because now it's like, okay, that stage is sold. You move to progress. Like, oh, they're usually come in early on Fridays before 8 a.m. to get some paperwork done. So if you happen to be here around that time, you might be able to catch him. That's
Mhm.
all I need to know. Now I'm
Yep.
there at 7 o'clock, right? I can wait outside the door, right? Like
Yes.
to catch them for even a quick conversation. And
Right.
again, let's say I'm me at 7 a.m. I'm not necessarily there trying to run a discovery process or present anything. It may be just to set up a time and build a little bit of trust, right? Again, moving each stage forward. So every stage you go into, it may not be linear, but once you're in that stage, what's your desired outcome? How can you move forward? Right? If you're in discovery, it might be purely fact finding, which then you can send a follow-up call as well to bring some samples, have a conversation, bring over, any type of collateral or documentation that they may want to see, other case studies, use cases, etc. So they feel more comfortable with you. So every single step should have a goal to move forward, right? But again, it's not toward necessarily, I mean, ideally the goal is to close, but can you move it towards closing? Can you move it down the field? And when you start thinking that way, you start playing the long game.
Yeah. One thing I love that you talk a lot about as far as who are the top performers in sales of all industries and specifically with your clients too, is they spend the majority of their time prospecting and qualifying who they're going to speak with. Because I remember the early days of being in the field, and the answer to, oh, you're not developing enough business was make more calls. And it's a circle, it's a trap. So can you take me from so instead of, calling on that same person that you just got through the gatekeeper, and now you found when that doctor's going to be in the office on Friday, what should I be doing between when I heard he's going to be in the office and when I'm sitting in my car at 7 a.m. on Friday? What kind of ways can I research and do that qualifying so that when that game time starts, I can be ready?
Cool. So I think there's a few different ways. There's like emotional preparation to gain emotional trust, and there's like logical preparation. Like logical preparations, like taking a look at even in your CR, what details do you have about the notes, any past calls? Is there anything online you can learn about the doctor that's relevant to the field that you're in, right? Like have they been part of conferences or anything else like that? Like that's like very logical. So any detail that's going to help you potentially gain trust faster from a business perspective, that's what you want to find out. That could be press releases. That could be whatever it could be checking out their social media, see what they're posting about, if they're active on there. Some are, some are not. It varies, right? But you do whatever, like it's 2022 as right now, right? Might be 2023 when you actually listen to this, but it's like you could search and find about anything by anyone right now, right? So you gain some of that business perspective, right? And that by itself, you already had the game. Now, here's the thing. At the end of the day, generally speaking, most doctors are very ego-driven. Most people are stats-driven, etc. Right? So now, what else can you find out about them that will help gain trust very quickly that's going to be relevant to them? Right? So take a look at their social media. Have they posted anything? Maybe they got voted, number one doctor, in the Pacific Northwest, right? Number one pediatrician in the Pacific Northwest by whatever organization, right? Or maybe other cool things they posted about recently. Take a look at their Facebook page. Take a look at any of their social media handles for the organization. What have they put out recently? Because usually it's probably important to them. Right? So if you saw a big healthcare system and you see that the healthcare system had published a recent article that's like, getting a lot of buzz, you want to know what that is. Right? So like, depending on how small or big, you want to do your homework in advance, knowing about what's going on in their world, what's most important to them. And sometimes it's really clear and evident, and sometimes it's not as clear. So you do your best, right? But then you can also uncover some of the personal components too. Like if, for example, like, just it's small basic stuff that like, I don't know. You find out, even it's so silly. Like you find out like what sports teams are into. Yeah. Right. Other things that are important to them. How can you slip that in? You uncover their family person. How can you incorporate that in your conversation? Yes. And I think a mistake a lot of people make is like they walk in, they're like, "Oh, hey, so I see you're a fisherman. Cool, me too. I'm a fisherman too. Awesome." That's very general, right? But like, imagine like, you go to that, you book a meeting with that doctor, or you're in the hallway, you're talking a little bit. It's like, "Hey, how's it going?" It's going good. You have some conversation, rapport, and you're wrapping the meeting up. And, it's like, "Hey, so you got any plans for the weekend?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to go. I got some kid stuff too." And you're like, "Yeah, cool. Me too. Actually, I got 2 boys at home. We're actually going to be going camping, doing this and this weekend, over here by this river. Ever been there?" "Oh, no, that sounds amazing." Now it's like, boom, you're starting to build some emotional trust and rapport based off of that. So I think the mistake, it's like the way you think about it, everything that you do in a sales call from the preparation to that point will either gain trust or decrease trust.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know it to be the true, what could you find out up front to actually improve what happens on that call?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always gonna be like, I need to find these things every single time, because sometimes it simply won't be available, especially if you call on like a doctor that's been like, let's say you look at their website, you can tell it's from like 1999, right? They may not have updated it. So they might be limited, right? So you got to take what you can in terms of what you can prepare, get the best gathering of the situation, and then you just do your best in conversation. But more importantly, what questions can you prepare now? So if you don't have a lot of details, what questions can you prepare? What do you want to find out? Right. So it's like, it's not what you say, but also what do you ask?
Right. And it's not, can I check samples?
Exactly.
It's not enough. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. You want to be like transformational about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, like you find a doctor that maybe has worked for a big healthcare system for like 20 years. So they've seen the changes across the board. How powerful is, hey, listen, like, since you've been a podiatrist for, 20 plus years, you've seen the evolution, and you've been here at Legacy Hospital for how long? What have been some of the coolest things you've seen in the last 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Or most recent, how about the most recent innovations, right? Or if you're studying industry trends, you want to bring that up. Hey, I know this is a bit controversial because they just came out with X procedure. I'm definitely curious. What are your thoughts?
Oh, so good, Marcus.
Those are that make you stand out.
Yes, exactly. And it comes back to knowing your customer and what their goals are, right? And if we can help them achieve those things. I remember when I was working for Agendia, which is a molecular diagnostic company for women's health. And the oncologists are always being presented new and exciting technology to help direct their care. If it's going to be radiology, if it's going to be, chemo or all kinds of things. And so our test would help them. But the thing is, they are so bombarded with all of these different options that it was a huge weight off their shoulders that our team had a group, a customer's care group that would explain the results and explain the test to his patients. So then suddenly they are bought into the test, yes, but they can focus on diagnosis, this is going to mean for your family, what it's going to mean for your recovery, and the details of the test, which he may or may not know to a certain degree. It's all handled. We took that off their plates. And I just remember that being something that was really helpful for oncologists. And the only reason that we did it was because we knew that they have to explain so much in a short amount of time with that patient, that if we could help take some of the load off, it would be a win. And it was a huge help.
Powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Even if it's just like you ask, like, what's your current process for doing this? What's your current process for doing X? How does it impact you? How could that be improved?
Yeah.
Right. And they're telling these type of things, like you just mentioned. It's like, oh, cool. Like, so now it's like, oh my gosh, it's painful. We only have like 3 minutes. I explain this whole process for them. That they feel overwhelmed, that they're emotional already because of what's going on, and they get mad at me. So now you have all it's very powerful because you're actually uncovering what's actually going on in the world. So then from there, it's amazing how when you show them the solution, it's like a no-brainer now. It's like, this makes sense. Like, of course, you take it all from me, great. And
detach it from what our sale is to what they really need. I think that's something that I hear of often, is that, that doesn't really that's not going to help me sell my product, but it's going to increase the trust, and you build that goodwill and that reciprocal nature with that target. So with that client, you help them, and then the trust is there when you have something to bring to the table. I think that's a really powerful concept.
So a lot of times people they focus on the short-term benefit, but they don't focus on the long-term impact, right? So let's go back to even your example right there. Like, you just reduce the stress of the doctor.
Yeah.
So they're not stressed. The patients are happier. They get support. The doctor is able to provide help. If they want to help their patients, they will provide a next level of care. That's powerful. So when they're less stressed, they can take better care of the patients. They can focus more on other patients as well. They can serve more people. There becomes all these other benefits as a result of what you sold them.
Yeah.
And mistake people make is like, oh, this solves one single problem, right? And you can apply this concept to like literally anything. So for example, like you look at, say, like this water bottle, if you're watching the video, like this water bottle, it seems like nothing to most people, like, oh, it's a water bottle. But for me, it's not just a water bottle, it's how I stay hydrated. When I stay hydrated, I feel better. When I feel better, I perform better. Right. So it's not just like, oh, this quenches my thirst. It's like this water bottle helps me. Oh, it also helps me reduce going back and forth because it's a huge bottle. So it saves me time and makes me more productive.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's probably not what people buy a water bottle for, but that's why I buy a water bottle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I add a fringe benefit to that water bottle?
Please, go ahead. Yeah.
So we got one of those as well. And recently we just cut and put a Christmas tree in our house. We're recording this before Christmas, everybody. And it is a long water bottle, so it's easier to fill the tree with.
See?
Many benefits.
Right. That's my point, right? So a lot of times, like, I think it's like when people look at like one thing, they're like, oh, interesting. Like even like my book, people are like, it's not just a book to, oh, it's some neat tips. It's like, ultimately, if you do what's in the book, you'll make more money. You have more time freedom. You do whatever you want. That's why people want to get better at sales. They don't want to get sales just to get better at selling. They want to get better at selling so they can create the life that they want. That's just reality.
Right. You know, for most folks who are listening to this podcast right now, they're in medical sales or in some part of sales that touches healthcare. And what I find is often they will transition in and out of other types of sales. So they'll go for SaaS for a while, they'll do other kinds, and then many of them come back to medical sales because they really get a thrill from knowing that they touched a patient's life. And so at the end of the day, you know, we've got to overcome that feeling of, well, if I'm improving and becoming a better salesperson, am I becoming more salesy? Well, no, you're helping more people because you're better at your craft. And so that's what I really appreciate about your book, and all the things that you share, because you make it a playbook and a step-by-step system that people can follow, and they can improve themselves beyond what they're taught at their corporate training, which goes so far and only lasts a week or two every year. So it really does pay, I've found, to invest in these alternate good sales coaching, because if you commit to it in this lifelong way, the effect that you have on other people in any industry, and certainly in medical sales, is incredible.
You're so spot on, right? Where, you know, I look at every career, it's a choice. It's either you either look at it as a craft or just a job. Right. And we look at it as a craft, and especially when you're able to see the bigger picture, because you're spot on. Like if you truly believe in the healthcare solution that you sell, that you will positively impact someone's life. And it doesn't have to be like necessarily anything crazy. It could be a simple medical device for a foot. Right. But if that's going to make the life of someone's, you know, grandmother, grandfather way easier because of that, so they can have more time with their family and kids and actually run and play with them, you change their life, right? And when you start thinking this way, you realize it's actually your duty to sell at the highest level. Because when you sell at the highest level, you are serving at the highest level.
Right. Exactly. And well, first of all, Marcus, thank you so much for joining me today. Every time I talk to you, you drop gems and strategy. Today, some of my favorites specifically were you do not get paid to be comfortable. So that is something we all can be reminded of now and then, right? So important. I love how you approach getting access to hard to reach people so creatively. See if you can figure out their email. I mean, try some things and see if they work. And I love how you help people to really focus in on doing better and higher quality tasks instead of a greater quantity. And I think that can apply everywhere. So I know I'm inspired. I love your book. I've shamelessly promoted it so much. You know how much I love you. And I'm so glad you're up here in the Pacific Northwest with me. Can you tell anyone who's listening to the show or watching the show today where they can connect with you and find out more?
Awesome. So you head over to LinkedIn. I'm pretty popular on LinkedIn. Head over there. Look at my name, Marcus Chan. You can also go to closewithchan.com. Get a copy of my book for free. Just pay for shipping and handling. That's probably the easiest place to get that. Or just you can just Google me, right? Sounds weird. You can just Google me, but you'll probably see me pop up on the top search as well. That'll be easy to find too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And for everybody listening, please be sure to let us know what your thoughts were about today's conversation in the comments. Thank you so much again, Marcus. It's so great to see you, and I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.